Uh, Genetic Moo have been doing a lot of stream tests, and as part of their testing, they're going to be broadcasting using 2 cameras and a piece of software called OBS, which is like a sort of a mini TV studio for streaming. It looks like everything's working, but it will mean you'll probably have the option of flipping between 2 camera views, the wide angle and the close-up.
There's 4 cameras.
Oh, is there 4 cameras?
Yeah, so we've got two cameras, obviously, on Zoom, and then we've got a 4-camera setup in OBS.
Okay, and that then comes through one of the Zoom channels. Is that right?
And feedback.
So, Sean, you can tell me when you're ready. Or,
okay, so did somebody say there was a problem with some feedback?
Sorry?
I was saying, did somebody mention feedback? Have we got a problem with feedback?
I don't think so. I can't hear anything. No.
Okay, well, we've got 30 people in at the moment. I'll just give them a few more minutes. So a little update then. So this is the second talk in the second season. I think they've been really very interesting, and we're definitely going to do another season afterwards. I've been talking to Nick and a few other people about this, but I might have a little break after this season. So there are 3 more sessions in this season. I'm involved in a project in Leicester where we're doing some live events with local digital artists, and I might have 2 weeks to focus on that project, but of course you'd be welcome to join us. So we will have 3 events in June, organised by different artists in the community. I'm going to be doing what I call Interact Live, which will be live music and some interactive artwork. We're then going to have a music event organised by R10, which is a local experimental music studio. And we're also going to have a performance and music organised by another local digital artist, Leonie de Barrigueur. And they're going to run sequentially on Fridays. And I will make sure that information about those goes out to people, so that if you fancy participating or joining or whatever, you can come along to those. And then what we will do after those events, I'll look to read the next season of CAS events, as they seem to be going down quite well. Now, remember, the final event in this season is going to be short talks. So if anybody else out there, they're starting to come through requests to participate, but if anybody else would like to do a short talk, 10 minutes or so, but you can be shorter or a little bit longer, feel free to volunteer. Drop me a line, seanc@cuttlefish.com, and I will find a space for you. Last time we had a great selection of talks actually, and quite a variety, but everything was interesting. So I'm sure really whatever you want to talk about, it could be, I just noticed Catherine Mason there, it could be something from an art historic practice. I know you're doing a bit of research at the moment into the lockdown. I saw a message about that. It might be just a short talk about a piece of artwork, or it might be some work in progress. So I'm happy to schedule anything really. So do let me know. I'd say places are limited, but we still have 5 left. So it's not as if we're desperate. You're going to have to be really quick, but you never know. People might decide, everyone might email me at once and all the slots could go. Okay, so that's the plan for the few weeks time, the final, I think 9th of June, actually, the final talk in the series. Next week, we're going to have Boredom Research, who I'll talk a little bit about at the end. And then after that, it's going to be myself talking about the Computer Arts Archive project. But tonight we have Genetic Moo. They've been associated with the Computer Arts Society, the London Group, the Lumen Prize for quite a few years. And I think maybe their signature project is something called Microworld that they will tell you all about. Microworld is sort of interactive ecology of connected artwork, shall we say. They'll explain it a lot better than me. And I think the plan for today is they are going to sort of give a bit of a talk behind the scenes about how their new incarnation of Microworld at Home, operates. And then we have a slot booked on Saturday at 8 o'clock in the evening, UK time, where they'll actually be doing the performance or the main event for about a 2-hour slot. And we've said, how about having this as a Computer Art Society social? So you'll be able to have 2 streams, a Zoom chat, and then their live stream over YouTube, and you can flip between the 2, participate in the chat, just be a bit social, or simply sit back and watch the things you're going to hear about. We'll have a little chat maybe about that afterwards. Yeah. So just let a couple more in, but I think we're probably about there. So what I will do now is I'll hand over to Nicola, and I'm sure she'll give you a good introduction and then take you through this new project.
Hi, okay, so I'm Nicola. I'm one half of Genetic Moo. You can't see Tim at the moment because he's actually holding my laptop, but maybe he can wave his hand in front of the camera. Yeah, so this is our Microworlds at Home project, and it's basically because of the lockdown, we thought, well, if we can't take it out there, we better do it here. And we've actually wanted to set up a Microworld in our own home for a very long time, so it was the perfect opportunity, and we just so happen to have a cupboard full of kits. I'm just going to do a quick run through of what we're about. I noticed Tim hasn't changed the camera position, so I'll do that now. So this is our slideshow, and it's just to tell you a little bit about who we are. Just make sure I press the right button. So we are an art project, and we are not in control of our technology at the minute, and we run interactive art events, but we are inspired by science, and we're very interested in biology, and at the moment we have a very deep interest in microorganisms, and here are a few that some of you will have seen before. And of course we're very interested in artificial life and algorithms to actually bring life to art. We've got some samples there. And we use a number of devices to draw our audience in to our work. We work with flesh, sometimes human, and sometimes sea life itself, and we manipulate it into weird and wonderful creatures that are inspired by real creatures in nature. In this one, you can see, Tim's putting his shadow in front of it, a sea squirt. And so we want something that looks beguiling, intriguing, possibly beautiful, and maybe disgusting to get our audience into the space. This is the, I'll run it in fact. This is the first creature that we made together. It's a starfish, and it was inspired by an imagined future evolution for humans to leave the cerebral and become more sensual. And so if the imagery is coming up okay on the screen, you'll see that it's made up of human body bits. And we have a large number of creatures. So these are our sea squirts in action, and our animalcules, and then we have a globster. Our globster here was originally called Virus, but it's been renamed in the circumstances. And then Mother. And Mother was a piece that we made during a residency. I did an AA2A residency at Camberwell University, and it was in fact this that took us, brought us into the world of the Lumen Prize, because with this we won the Founders Prize and then started to work with Carla Rappaport at Lumen Prize. We make artwork for people to engage with, and usually our engagements are unencumbered. That means that they don't have to touch anything, and we're very keen on it being a multiple user engagement, so that there are lots of people that can do it at the same time. They don't have to queue, they don't have to be told what to do, they can explore it. It's an experimental art space. And we talked about our interest in creatures, and in fact we refer to our artworks as creatures. And to draw the audience in, another device we use is to give it behaviors, give them behaviors and reasons, if you like, to respond. so that the audience feels they are developing a relationship with them. It may be that it could be a Connect technology that the audience is using to connect with avatars. It could be webcams or microphones, and this engagement allows there to be a relationship between the real and the virtual world. This was a piece we made. I'm not sure if you can see it very well. I'm just going to change camera one. This was a piece we made when we were working on a project with the Wellcome Trust. And again, it's using Connect technology, and we've brought humans into the space to actually generate different creature shapes. And in this case, this was actually recreating a bacteria for a film. Right, I'm going to just briefly say that we also make artworks that actually use touch screens or interfaces, and these allow our audience to participate in our artwork. So not only do we make the artwork or the audience engage with the artwork, but the audience can also make the artwork. And in this case, we've got the animats, so like animal robots, where the audience or the visitor can construct a creature from various bits and then decide what its motivations are going to be, which colours it's interested in, how it's going to move. And these get entered into bigger artworks, which we will show you in a minute. And we also have interactive activities for kids based on cellular automata. So this is a seed program. It's a visual interface, but the participants develop rules for effects. So they are learning, maybe learning if clause statements and things behind the scenes, and generating landscapes that can be projected into the room to affect other things. And perhaps one of our most popular pieces is a piece called Squidlets, which we made quite a few years ago, seen all around the world, and I think today maybe 50,000 squidlets have been made, is that right? About 50,000. And this is the opportunity for our visitors to become digital art and for them to be in the art space itself, and again have be feeding maybe of red, green or blue light, and yeah, create another level of engagement within the art world. Okay, so Sean mentioned the Lumen Prize. You may know that Lumen Prize has set up a new group or body called the Lumen Art Projects, which we're working with. And with them, we have gone around the world showing Microworlds. So Microworlds are, we refer to them as a digital ecosystem project. Many years ago, Sean, Clark, Tim and myself set up a project in Leicester called Symbiotic. And the idea was to create artworks that could respond to each other. And so it could be looking at something, and I can see Tim looking over my shoulder. Tim, do you want to join in? No. Okay, so we had artworks responding to each other. And it's this idea of, can we create connected work? So not only artwork that responds to the audience, but artworks that respond and react to each other as well. Another piece that we showed with Lumen Art Projects was in Brecon. It's a micro world where we worked with 60 people in Brecon creating an artwork. And we taught them coding, so they all learned processing, worked with the University of the Third Age as well. So we taught kids from as young as 8 up to 76 was the eldest. And they all learned basic creative coding using processing language, which we were able to group together into what we call a super organism project. Now, for those of you, some of you may be aware, a super organism could be a coral reef or a bee colony. So it's this idea of many things coming together to make one massive, beautiful thing. And we also worked with Lumen, and we set up an artwork in a Microworld in Eureka. This is just one view from it, but I'm just flagging it up because it's a modular system. So where we've got, so it's describing how the artworks connect. Sorry, I'm losing control of my keyboard. So we've got the squidlets here, and they have a camera that's looking at multiple, which is these young people are engaging with, and it's providing colour and therefore food for the squidlets to eat. And then, so multiple is massive user engagement, and then we have seed behind it. And there are two other artworks, all of them feeding off each other, creating a connected art. This was the first time we'd shown in such a massive venue. So Eureka is a children's museum, so it has hundreds of thousands of people go through. So it's a real test for us to create something that was robust. And the last Microworld that I'm going to flag up was for one we did last year in Saudi Arabia in Ithra. This was a scale that we'd never worked on before. The space was 355 square meters, and we created 11 artworks for the space. And again, with the idea it all be connected. This is Jack of Lumen Art Projects helping set up. And I'll just give you an idea of the scale of the space and the amount of preparation. We were working on a scale that we'd never worked on before. And these are some of the mock-up drawings that Jack and we worked on. And yeah. And then the very last one, in fact, that I'll show you is, if I can get there. I don't think I can. Oh yeah, so sorry, I'll just get that. This is the, if you can see that. Yeah, this is the installations itself. It gives you an idea of the scale of it. But you may see that more easily in the other screen. So this is the first time we've worked on anything of this scale. It was an incredibly stressful but very rewarding experience. Okay, I'm going to stop that one there. Right, so what I want to do then, I want to start talking about our Microworld at Home project, but I wonder if anyone, Sean, do you think anyone might have any questions that they want to ask before I go on to that?
I'm just unmuting myself. Well, yeah, let's because I have a couple of minutes for questions before we move on to the next bit. Maybe I'll have a quick question.
Yeah,
typically, sure. How many interactive pieces, computers, cameras, and so on do you have in a Microworld?
So the smallest Microworld we would have would be with 4 computers. And we would probably have one that would be audio based, so listening to a listening artwork like Aeroplankton. And then we would have 2, maybe one with Connect and then 2 with webcams. And at this moment in time, we've developed 8 that could go into a Microworld. Again, you know, using Connect, webcams and microphones. But we've also got these touchscreen pieces that go into it as well. So it ranges from tightly coupled interaction to much looser, and then possibly to a very much more contemplative piece like Mother, just ticking away in the background.
And looking behind you, I can see, I sort of know the answer to my question. How many people at once might interact with a Microworld? So how many people will be in the space? And with kids, it's clearly lots.
Yeah. I mean, so when it was at Eureka, I think that they would take maybe 30 kids in at the same time. Obviously, people can watch. But as far as possible, we like it to be that they can just go in and something will happen. Never sort of having the situation where people have to queue or to be told what to do. So you can explore it. So obviously with some, in some cases, say like with Connect, that took a little while to get used to how to work with it, because traditionally it would be, you know, people going in and getting their skeleton read, but we use it with the depth sensor. So basically a mass can go in there. We did one piece in Connecticut where is a very small space we were in, and we maybe had about 30, 40 people coming into the space at the same time, so that they would make just a big mass together, which then would affect the creature in the corner of the room. Okay,
great. Well, if others have questions, make a little note of them, and we'll ask them all at the end. But I thought it might be worth asking. So I'll hand back to you if you want to then talk about how you're adapting this to work at home.
Yeah, okay, so I think, shall I turn on the lights? What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the light, and I'm going to actually move my camera around the space to give you an idea of it. So, in fact, Nick, you're going to recognise this, Nick Lambert. So, in the one end of our wall, we've got a dome mirror, which is actually Nick Lambert's. We're working on a project, and that is his. And we're using this. We've got a webcam, a Logitech webcam, looking into the mirror, and this is so that it gives us a 360 or a more.
So we can't hear you too well, actually.
Oh, can you not?
No, it's sort of better for some reason when we can see you. It sounds.
Oh, okay, okay. So, so Tim's showing the views. Can you see the other screen on the?
Yes. So people ought to be aware that there's another Genetic Moo screen, and if you click on that one, you'll get to see a different angle in the space.
Okay, and I just so basically we've got a dome mirror with a webcam looking into it, and this is so then that it can record. It's a fisheye effect on the Logitech camera, and it can record the whole room.
Oh.
I'm just going to take you around. So we've got cameras there, and then we've got either side of the room, we've got a couple of Logitech cameras, and then we've got another camera under the screen. And we are filming everything or capturing everything into OBS, which I guess quite a lot of people are familiar with now. So it's Open Broadcaster, and it's used for, well, I used to use it for screen capturing work, but you can use it now for giving multiple views for live streaming. So as Sean says, if you can see the other view on the live feed, you'll see that there's a shot at the moment with the 4 views. And then what we do is we've got 4 projectors in the space, and so they can film. Sorry if I'm making you feel seasick. They can project onto every room. So Tim's just turning the light off so you can see it. Okay. So we've got, and then above the dome, we've got 2 projectors as well. So it allows us to do layered imagery. And so there's, I don't know if you can see from what's going on behind me. Yeah, so what we're doing then, we are using OBS, and we've got 4 webcam feeds, and then we've got also webcams that are connected to computers, and these are filming off the screen, and they then feed into the programs that we have running, so we can get the artworks responding to each other, so we can get feedback effects. If any of you have seen our streaming on a Saturday afternoon, you'll have seen some of this happening already. And on this Saturday, we've got it to a stage now where we can do a bit of a performance with it, where we'll be working through a number of stages of our artworks. So, okay.
Basically, we have a lot of kit. There's at least 6 computers in this room, 5 projectors, and about 8 webcams. And we just have all this stuff because we put these Microworlds on. So now we're not putting any shows on. We've got all this stuff at home. So we've just put it all into one room. And now we've got Sean all over the front walls. So we're lucky in a way. We've got a few bits and pieces because to connect these together in different ways, you need a few dongles and so forth. But yeah, fairly complicated setup, which was working perfectly yesterday, Sean. And then you changed the meeting. And now none of it.
Sean didn't change the meeting. It was my mistake. Anyway, so what we're doing is we are running, because we can't go out there and set up an exhibition and have people interacting with it, we have set up a space where the artwork can communicate with each other. So using webcams, at some point, I guess we'll bring in a microphone to respond to it with our aeroplankton. On Saturday, Sean, you're going to be participating in it with your MQT artwork, is that right?
Yeah, I'll explain a little bit about that in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll also be inviting some sound artists to do provide live sound in the space as well.
So I think my question is, so you have a system which is feeding back on itself, but you've opened that system to allow additional material to come in. And yes. As you just said, I'm going to be modifying one of my Art Things project. Art Things is a communication protocol for artworks, so that you can send little drawings into the space and they become part of the space. Can you say a little bit more maybe about some of the other inputs you've got coming from outside the space? Yeah, so we know a couple of people who are sound artists, so I'm going to, we're going to have a live feed of their work coming into the space. In terms of, have we got any other visual artists? Matt's doing something into it.
Well, I'm just going to use Sean's MQTT system, so anyone can use that. Put up instructions to create an input system. Then... Can
you hear what Tim's saying?
I know, I can, but I know what he's talking about. Maybe others don't, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so we'll set up information for that as well. And then really, it's just a matter of people saying that they've got an idea, because what we can do is we have a number of projectors that we're not using as well, so we could actually put them into the space as well and have things looking at that to feed into it. But there is a big emphasis on experimentation. I mean, Tim's just running stuff around the space at the moment. One of the things we're going to talk about in a minute is the actual programming in this space, how it's working, how we've composed it, how we've ended up with a variety of chapters. Right, Tim, would you like to talk through the program? Well, change the dot. Okay, so can you bring up the control over there? Can you press 0 on there? Okay, so what we've got is, so Tim and I have been, obviously the lockdown's been going on for some time, and we've been coding away and developing different artworks, or, you know, simple experiments, really, testing things. And we realized that rather than running things independently, it would be really good to actually try and compile it so that we had something to play with, almost like an instrument. And so both of us worked on various pieces, and then we brought it together. And instead of actually opening it up all the time, stopping the program and then coding it and tweaking it, we decided to work with sliders. So therefore, we had things like, you know, you may have shapes coming into the space. Instead of actually going into the code and changing them there, we would use our sliders to change the size, to change RGB, to change sensitivity, to change what they're interested in. And if I'm just going to, yeah, you can see there's some creatures on the wall. So this program is quite interesting. Basically what's happened is a kind of needs must. We wanted to write something that we could actually manipulate on the fly without going into the code, But what we've actually made now and are working on effectively is a program that could be run anywhere. It could be run remotely. So for example, we could set this up here, each webcam filming each wall could be run online, and that could go to a projector in another space, and that could have this running, or perhaps the program could be online and people could set it up so that they run it in their space. So it's really creating a remote piece. And this was inspired, in fact, I suppose in part, or I guess we were encouraged because the most recent show we did with Lumen Art Projects was for a university in Millersville in America. And they wanted to have a Microworld. They didn't quite have the money for us to go over there, but we thought, well, do you know what? It could be a really good experiment for us to try and build a Microworld system that we can hand over to someone. We just send them some kits, we'll give them the software and some instructions, and they set it up. And that's what happened. And it was a fantastic. It was a really important moment for us that we could actually guide people in setting up our programs without us being there. And usually, whenever we run interactive work, we are, doing a serious amount of tweaking. So to be able to create programs that other people can get to grips with quite quickly and then turn it into something that they want to see is really special. And in Millersville, they used one of the pieces for a musical performance as well. And I guess part of that is using these sliders, the slider system. I mean, is there a better way than saying Control P5 or something? But yeah, it's graphical coding basically. And so every computer, we've got 4 computers in the space, and all of the computers have the same program. And Tim and I, at this moment in time, we're managing everything ourselves. So we've got 2 keyboards each, 2 webcams each. We have music running, which is generated or has been, sent to us. And we're experimenting with the space and exploring it. And the piece behind, this is, you might be able to see that these are people. So the title of the artwork is called Sea People. And last year it was extremely hot in Margate, and I've never seen so many people on the beach. And so I went and filmed as many people as I could in the sea. And then we wrote a program to extract the silhouette, because I filmed it in very bright light, high contrast, so that you would just get a silhouette. And all of these figures, perhaps Tim, you can move some of those figures around. Could you just, it's on, yeah. So if you, this one here, Tim, where my hand is? This one.
Yeah, what do you want?
Yeah, just move it.
I'll make them big.
Yeah, just move them.
Big!
Move them. So we just,
I kill off the pattern in the background. You can see them wiggling around.
yeah, but also they're movable. And so every layer we bring into this, at the moment there are about 10 tabs on our program. You don't want it to get too over the top, or it doesn't. A lot of our creatures are being created geometrically, graphically within the system, rather than using photographs, so that they're not too, it's not a very, the file size is quite modest. And I would say that this is the first time in a long time that we've had the opportunity to really play with what we're doing, because so often we're preparing for an exhibition and it gets very stressful. Got a little bit stressful today, but sorry about that. But this is a chance for us to really get to grips with playing with it, with learning, with discovering aesthetics. I've just got to show you something in the corner which has caught my eye, which I think looks beautiful. I wonder if I can capture it. So this is a sun star, and it's just curling. You know, we're creating, I sound a little bit over the top maybe, but we're creating a space that we really want to be in. That it just is slightly chaotic and trippy maybe, but it's amazing, you know. We're learning a lot.
One thing it introduces, we've talked about this idea of a connected digital artwork before, and Ernest mentioned it in his talk in the last season, where the artworks can communicate with each other as well as the human beings.
Yes.
So the human beings can communicate through the artwork, or directly, and the artworks can communicate. And this sort of introduces the idea of connected art spaces. And it's by necessity, because at the moment we can't go out and go into galleries and so on, but maybe it's coming up with a nice format which says, because the technology you have, and I know it's more sophisticated than most people have at home, but increasing numbers of people have a projector or a large TV screen, they have computer controlled lights and things like that. So it introduces this idea that maybe there could be a format for an event that continues after the lockdown, which might be connected art spaces. Now, one thing I'm going to try and do on Saturday is, people are probably familiar with my loft background at the moment. Well, I've got a screen and I have a new projector, and I'm going to try and create a mini satellite micro world in my space up here.
Lovely.
So we talked that the event on Saturday will have the main stream coming from you, which is the YouTube stream, which will be like the second, I can see the second feed you're doing here, which is like a triptych of images.
Yeah, the 3,
and that will be running, you'll be running work, you called it chapters, like little segments where you explore different things.
Yes, because,
and
I think
sound as well.
And it may be that we'll actually flag up some of those, because it may be inspired by, we did a session on Saturday, for example, and it got very fiery. And so we just sort of carried on exploring that. And I'm quite interested. We were trying things out with landscape. Tim's got some roots growing over there. So it's kind of thinking about creating environments for things like the sea people to be in. But also you can draw in it as well. There's a live drawing possibility and typing as well. So I think perhaps on Saturday we will flag up by typing what we see this particular section as being. So that may actually help interpret what's going on.
And then at some point, in fact, maybe I think Tim was suggesting all the time, we'll have the ability for people to send in their own little drawings using my little drawing program.
Absolutely.
So that gives us an immediate way of getting, I'm going to just open that program up for people. It gives us a fairly immediate way of allowing the people out here in larger numbers to contribute materials. Now, this was a little program that I did for a project in Leicester, and it was a sort of gaming event, and it allows people to create pixel art on their mobile phones. And I'm just typing in the address. And
I turned it off, Sean. You want to turn it on?
Oh, yeah, I could do actually, yeah.
Hold on.
I was going to show people here. So this is my little pixel editor. Nothing too fancy, really.
Give me one sec.
But it allows you to make your own little drawing. So it was originally designed to allow people to create pixel art, and then they could send these little pixel drawings to a web page. And once they were on the web page, they could download them and use them in a scratch game. But I can press a button.
Press the button.
And oh, there we go. That's I've just drawn that. That was nice and quick. So let's try drawing. Yeah, I'm glad that you don't have to be able to draw to be an artist anymore. All right.
But it stands out.
Okay, yeah, and so I'm going to send
there's
another one, and so on.
I'm standing in front of the. Yeah, there is the.
So I'm sending a few over. So one option for interaction.
Yeah, I'll stand here and you can see some entering space. Yeah, so we're doing this performance on Saturday, and which will mark the 4th YouTube that we've done, and I certainly each week we're getting let's say a bit more in control of it, because anyone who's worked with OBS and YouTube and everything, you lose control of it at some point, you know. So I think we're doing pretty well, and you know, when you've got 2 web cameras the same, so the settings can get, you know, all over the place. So we're getting better, but I think I'm pretty confident that we will carry on doing this even after the lockdown. I think we will carry on.
Yeah, so this is something interesting. You know, it's fair to say that I don't think the lockdown has been good really for anyone, particularly those who've ended up diseases and so on. But there is that small silver lining. Often when you put people in constrained environments, they do create interesting things.
Yeah.
And I think we're all in a very constrained environment at the moment. We can't go out, we can't go to galleries and so on. So for me, this is an interesting response to see how you've taken something which really thrives. It needs people in order to interact, but you haven't got, apart from yourselves, you can't take it to people. So try. What does that say, Tim?
It's a picture of you, Sean.
Oh, it's a picture of me. Okay, lovely. Yeah. So I think for me, I think that's an interesting response. I think this idea of where might it go next. Well, let's see how it goes on Saturday, but maybe you know, in a month's time, we try to add a few more worlds. We see if there's anybody else out here who fancies setting up a small space at home, even if it's just running off their television with a bit of mood lighting, to see if we can create more connected spaces.
We have got more projectors.
We've got so I think we've got 4 other little projectors that we could have feeds coming into the space, and I think, as I say, because we're going to carry on doing it, it could offer up an opportunity also for people sharing their spaces. So it's very much like you were saying with Ernest, that you've created your art world and then you port it as well, you know, which I think is really exciting.
Now, also, I think it's an interesting, almost like counterpoint to the VR stuff that's happening at the moment. Yeah. And this is more like an augmented space, or even like a cave space, but it's a sort of DIY cave. I remember when the cave environments were popular, they would cost tens of thousands of pounds, high-end projectors and special spaces. But really, you've produced something here with, we were talking about this, £5 webcams, they used to be anyway.
Now they're 150 or something.
Everything's gone up in price. So it's a much more sort of DIY approach to creating immersive spaces.
Yeah, I think, and because you did mention, of course, we do have a lot of kit. That's absolutely true. It's not terribly expensive, but I think it's just, you know, even because I do have a 360 camera, a Pix Pro, but I can't, it's an early model, so I can't do a live feed off it at all. So therefore, it's the reason to do it with a dome projector. And anyone who watches our live feeds will see that the cameras aren't so sharp, or maybe there's a little bit of lag. But I just feel that you kind of have to work with it. I don't think it's worth going too crazy about it, because it'll come on, you know.
And Nancy actually has made a suggestion here, which I like, which is how about having a list of minimal tools, equipment and infrastructure or instructions. And she could then potentially share it with her students to get them to connect and participate.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, definitely. But can they code, Sean?
Sorry?
Can they code, or can they just...
Are these students that will be coding?
So I don't know if you feel free to join us, Nancy, if you want to just say a little bit about potentially how your students could get involved.
We'd have to create little systems. We're interested in creating small systems that people can use to create things. Absolutely, yeah. That's central to this.
I can see you've unmuted, Nancy.
Yes. So I teach design students. We have students learning, you know, traditional design tools, but they are also interested in learning how to experiment with these tools instead of using traditional processes. Not so much coding, more image making, experimental video.
Yeah, well, so as you heard, Sean has his piece. Certainly, Sean, oh, I suppose I can do it myself. If I put so info@geneticmoo.com and then email me, because even if it wasn't this week, if for whatever reason it couldn't be done this week, it could be on for a future project. But I think that, as I say, we've wanted to set up a space like this for a long time and never done it. And I think now we have no reason for a lounge. We can just keep this running, you know? Yeah, okay, good. I look forward to hearing from you.
Fantastic.
Actually, oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. So Nancy, we have a chat scheduled, and maybe have a little chat about this. So when we speak, because one option is that using the communication system that I've got, Art Things, we can exchange little bits of data and then visualize them when they arrive. So those rather creepy creatures behind on the screen at the moment, I could, for example, quite easily create a program that sent enough data to construct one of those. It might just say, well, how many legs, how many and body parts and so on. And when it arrives, it gets constructed. So you bounce around little mini beetle DNAs that can be used to construct beetles when they arrive.
The thing is to try and make it so, you know, you can do that and you can get people to create stuff, but if everything's going to end up roughly the same, it's not that interesting. They might enjoy it. The difficult part is to create a system where people using it can create enough, have enough variety and control to be able to create something that's much more personal to them, so they get a good sense feeling about they've created their own unique thing, rather than just creating a beetle with, you know, Greek 5 leg shrubs and 4 legs or something. I do agree with you. That's why we want to there you go.
Well, I think there could be some potential there to try something.
Bring anything up, and if you're being intuitive about it, you can start to try and build things and get immediate responses off the screen and alter what you're building from that. So no instructions whatsoever, but lots of simple things building up to large scale, larger kind of complexity. So some people, if they get really into it, can spend a lot of time and create very intricate things. Other people can just whack out kind of cool things quite quickly. So yeah, a mix of all of that. That's really one of the things.
Yeah, and you're also talking about being able to integrate web pages. So if somebody had an animation, I guess,
yeah,
it wouldn't fully interact with the rest of the space.
Another projection. I don't see why go to the effort of trying to get someone's web page inside your program. Why not just project it into the room and then just point the camera at it, and then that feeds the system. So it's kind of...
and I think also, because we've got a few old monitors and we've got a few old Macs, so I think there are certain things that we don't have to have everything connected to the internet, but there's certain ways that we could bring things in. So I think Saturday will be an experiment to see what we can do, how we can manage it. And then I think then it's the first stage, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next. And I think I love the idea, because I imagine that traveling abroad is going to be restricted for quite some time as well. That there is this potential for sharing spaces in other countries as well, which would be really nice.
Okay, so do we have any more questions? I'm watching the chat, or people can just jump in if they have anything to ask.
Don't turn it all off.
I'm doing a countdown, Sean. How long have we got?
So a couple of other thoughts. Now, what you're seeing is very different to what we're seeing. It's the nature of streaming. Will you be, and are you documenting the work on a high res? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I'm doing a 360. So I document on 360, my 360 Pix Pro. All of the programs can be captured within the programs themselves. And
it's archived on YouTube. We stream to YouTube. It gets archived. So about 4 weeks there work already. Everything that you stream.
Yeah, it's no, Sean's asking about high resolution.
We're sort of losing Tim, but I think you were saying that the videos of the experiments are on YouTube.
They are. Yeah, so if you go to the front end of our website, we've got a link to the next event. And then underneath it says a link to the archive, and basically it's the same page. And so all of the videos we've done so far, they're about roughly 2 hours. I think the latest one's a little bit longer. And it gives you, certainly the last one in particular, I think gives you a good flavour of how it's developed and how it can develop. Yeah. We've just had a coding error.
Okay. Okay, well that's sort of going to happen.
It's real. It's real.
Okay, well that's great. Thanks very much for showing us around.
That's fine. I can see
very
Andy's
many living rooms
something
like that around the world.
It would, yeah, so Andy's just asking a question. So I'm interested in how connected an ecosystem you're building. Do the creatures running on programs on different computers talk, interact with this? Yeah, but so Andy, they do, rather than do it through a network, they're doing it through webcams or through microphones. And we're using, at this moment in time, I'd say we're experimenting quite a lot with, I suppose, feedback within the video and creating trails of light that then the creatures either feed off or are repelled from or attracted to. It's very simple in terms of the behaviour at the moment, and I don't think we necessarily ever want to make it so. Sorry, Tim, what'd you say? No, in terms of that it's repelled by, or they don't, they're not mating with each other.
We don't like using network signals. We do it in interactive museums. We don't like networks because they're not very intuitive to the audience viewing it. If one thing on one screen is setting up something else on another screen behind the scenes, how do they know what's happening, what's controlling what? So we've tended to avoid that, apart from when we have a creature designer, you design it and then you send it from one computer to the other computer that's got the big projector on it. So we use it to send an immediate signal, but they don't talk behind the scenes like Sean's do, which we might get involved in at some point. But yeah, certainly we try to make the connections between things more intuitive and controllable at a human level in the room, in the space, so through the air, through physical air.
I think one of the things perhaps that's important to say as well is that a lot of our work is shown in museums or art event spaces, and invariably, I guess the longest someone is likely to engage with it would be 30 minutes, and that's good, quite frankly, if they do that. May go back to it after a few days, but very long-term changes in that don't necessarily make sense within it. Nevertheless, we're doing experiments at the moment that we hadn't thought of doing. So I guess anything.
We can't hear Tim actually.
Yeah, I'll repeat. So Tim was saying at this moment in time, we haven't done anything where we've created something that responds to weather streams or to, data of any sort. But again, it kind of depends on whether we'll ever get an audience back.
Yeah, I sort of like the idea that maybe the lockdown's actually finished and you're in there just doing all of this. You could be there for
maybe we'll 2 years later, someone will dig us out.
You'll sort of emerge.
Yeah.
So I've just popped into the chat, I've just popped the information about how to register for Saturday. And yes, Nancy, feel free to invite anybody who might be interested in coming along on Saturday. Remember, there are going to be 2 streams. There's the Zoom chat, which we will be talking to each other, hopefully. I'll have some stuff running in the background. And then there will be the unadulterated YouTube stream. And I'm going to encourage people to flip between them depending on which one they want to at the moment. And you can join Zoom without cameras or anything, and it won't be recorded, so it will be very informal. But I hope people find it a sort of interesting proto event, I might call it, because who knows, maybe these things will become more common in the future.
Brilliant. So did that all feel a little bit chaotic?
Absolutely.
Will you forgive us?
Yeah, I'm chaotic in a very nice way. Yeah.
Oh, good. Everything was working fine in Zoom. Anyway, whatever. But yeah.
But I think what's worth doing is making sure we sort of capture this in terms of after the event, maybe do a little bit of work where we just capture your experiences and maybe some of the experiences of the audiences, because I'm sure within this chaos, there'll be a very interesting potential format or a form of engaging event that might be usable in the future.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think for us, it's, as I say, we're learning with Open Broadcaster. I know that there are people who are watching that also use it, and I mean, it has limitations, but it's undoubtedly loads more people are using software like this, so that will come on, and I think that will open up possibilities for people to do interesting collaborative streams, you know. So yeah.
I think it's very interesting. I don't know if we have any more questions. I'll give people another opportunity. Sue says, thank you for interesting chaos. That's a good way of describing it. Now, I haven't pre-warned her this, but I was going to suggest that, Vicky, if you wanted to say something about your talk next week, feel free to unmute yourself. Otherwise, I can say a few things.
Yeah, we can probably say something.
Okay.
So we're going to be talking, I mean, we're in mid-production at the moment. We're working on a touring show that obviously has got cancelled. It was supposed to happen over the summer. But postponed, yeah, to later in the year with everything going on. But it's going to be talking about our project with Arizona Cancer and Evolution Center primarily, aren't we? Paul's here as well, so I'm looking at him. Yeah, so it's about our arts and science collaborative work, but what we're working on now. So it's very much work still in development that we haven't really spoken about in detail. So yeah, it's a good opportunity to talk about work in progress, and also how that kind of feeds into other arts and science projects that we've been working on.
So I think it is interesting that it was unintentional, at least I didn't do it consciously, but a theme running through last week, this week and next week, it is a sort of a life, artificial life, or should we say nature inspired artwork, but all actually from slightly different perspectives. So I think across the 3 talks, actually, we will, I think, collectively learn some quite interesting stuff. Certainly, I think what the Genetic Moo have is that sort of environmentally impacted living of systems. So they have an outside and an inside, but they have an environment in which they operate. So there is going to be a little bit of chaos and unpredictability. If you think of Andy's work last week, I think we have less of an environment in which it takes place. The environment is the mathematics and the algorithms that are used to generate the work. And I think with your work, certainly from what I've seen in the past, you do have environments in which the artworks operate, but you also have artwork that is about environments. So I'm looking forward to seeing what your new project is.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're looking forward to talking about it. I mean, this is quite a different approach for us as well, because it's a little bit more filmic. So there's quite a lot of cinematography as well. So we're going to be talking about the mechanics of that, like how we're steering our own cameras and things like that. So that would be quite fun to kind of like show how we're developing it, really. Yeah, and how maybe it's not behaving quite like we want it to be at points.
Great. Okay, well, I look forward to that. Hopefully people have found today interesting. I think we should give Genetic Moo a round of applause. So thank you very much for inviting us into your house.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thanks.
Yeah, that was really good. And
Thanks.
I did, like I say, I'll pop the address for Saturday into the chat, and you'll find it on the CAS website and in the Facebook. So if anybody is able to come along, I think we should have fun. And the social side of it might just be a chance for us to chat a little bit. I've seen all the faces, but haven't spoken to everyone.
Yeah, and can I just say then, if people have any questions, especially about Saturday, do contact us, info@geneticmoo.com. I can see Miguel's asked something about advice for people in the creative coding sphere, so maybe you want to follow that up with a more specific question. So thank you, Sean.
Great.
See you Saturday.
Thank you all very much. Unless anybody has anything else to say, I think we'll stop there. We've managed to keep to about an hour, so doing well. Hope to see some of you on Saturday and then again on Tuesday with Boredom Research.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Okay,
Bye.
bye.